This is ABC 15's Cardinals Countdown.
Welcome to Four Peaks Brewing Company in Tempe. Craig Foy along with Tom Zenner, Jason Snavely. It's Cardinals Countdown on for the next hour. 602-685-3017 is the phone number. And of course you can get to us on social media, hashtag ABC15Cards. Guys, the 34-20 win yesterday in Cleveland. They are now 6-2 as they head into the bye week. Let's start with just some initial impressions of the game. What'd you take away?
So many highs and lows, guys. That second quarter was one of the worst second quarters I've seen the Arizona Cardinals make. I mean, this is the first time they pulled off a win when losing the turnover battle. Yeah. I mean, they fumbled the ball 4 times. Remember that. They lost 3. It could have easily been a total of 5 turnovers. The upside, of course, that second half, a completely different tune, and you know what? They pulled it off.
Yeah. Craig, I was thinking at halftime 2 things were going to happen. Arians was going to light them up,
or they're
going to make reservations at the Greenbrier because they should not have come back to Arizona if they had continued to play they did in the first 2 quarters. Really unacceptable. And I thought that was a turning point, a crossroads at halftime for them. What are you going to do? Right. Where are you going with this season? Because if they had come back at 5-3, there'd be a lot of people not taking them seriously at all, including me.
Against Cleveland.
It's inexcusable. But you have to give them credit for realizing, man, this thing could sink quickly. Yeah. Let's fix this now. They started making big plays. That was the defense. They could still cover up some of their deficiencies in the second half because they make big plays. Yeah. And that's their bread and butter all year long. Quick strike, making things happen. When Palmer's healthy and completing those passes to his receivers downfield, good things happen. So they bailed themselves out.
I thought it was very interesting that we got word yesterday morning that they were talking about an extension with Chris Johnson, and then he fumbles twice in the game. He coughs the ball up. I'm like, what is going on here?
Right.
I really have liked the way he's played, and he did finish with over 100 yards.
He did.
Right at 100 yards. So he had another good game, but 2 turnovers is unacceptable.
I love the hammer of that 1-year contract.
Yes.
He hasn't earned an extension quite yet. He's having a very good season. Why are we even talking about that yet? Right. It's not even a half point yet, when they were talking about that before the game. So there will be time for that for him to prove himself. You have to stay healthy. Right, you got to be on that field every single week. You got to hold on to the football.
I got a feeling they're not talking extension today after the 2 fumbles.
Maybe an extension of his fingertips so he can hold on to the ball better. I don't know.
I mean, if anything, guys, this is the game against the Cleveland Browns where Chris Johnson can do it. Of course, it doesn't matter what game it is. He comes back to the sideline. You're a lonely guy after a fumble. You do it twice. No one wants to even be near you,
Arians wants nothing to do with you after 2 fumbles. I was surprised he continued to get the workload.
I thought he was going to go to Andre.
Where's David Johnson?
It's interesting because they mentioned later when David Johnson had the ball and he fumbled it out of bounds. Remember that forward fumble that we thought Cleveland had gotten, but it was out of bounds? Yeah. And the commentator said, that's why David Johnson isn't getting enough reps because he can't hold on to the football. Yeah. I thought, wait a minute, your starter just gave it up twice. What are you talking about?
You look at these guys, they are so explosive, David Johnson and Chris Johnson. Do you sacrifice a little bit of that ball security because they can break it at any moment? They're not as secure with the football as other running backs that are used to going between the tackles. These guys are busting it off the edge, and they get a little careless.
I think when it's a guy like David Johnson, you're dealing with a rookie, so the leash is so much shorter. You've got a Chris Johnson who's a veteran, and he coughs it up. It's not super characteristic of him, so he almost gets a little bit of a pass card. Of course, he's going to get laid into because anyone who fumbles twice is going to get ripped.
And Craig, man, so much of it is mental.
Oh, yeah.
You drop a football, a pass, or you fumble, you're thinking about it. Somehow you have to get that out of your mind.
Yeah, and it's the worst thing that can happen to a running back or a receiver to have fumbles because it gets in your brain. It's sort of like the slump in baseball. Once you start striking out, it just happens over and over again. Hey, the other part of this was Josh McCown at quarterback. And people that have been around here a long time remember Josh McCown with the Arizona Cardinals. He used to be a neighbor of ours, and I swear it was like 50 years ago.
Doesn't it seem like a time ago?
How long ago was that?
Craig, it does seem so long ago because that was a different stadium for the Cardinals, right? A different era. Remember when he knocked the Minnesota Vikings out of the playoffs?
He got the key to the city up there.
That was unbelievable. But let's remind ourselves, this is Josh McCown, right? So I was expecting that in the second half. I was shocked they didn't put Manziel in. That's a testimony to really how messed up Johnny must be right now, not ready to play.
We've been talking about the positive side, then coming back to win it, but let's talk about some serious concerns. The first half, where was the pressure on Josh McCown? I mean, Josh McCown's been getting clobbered this season. The Cleveland Browns have given up the 3rd most sacks of anyone in the NFL. Why not bring the heat? I could not believe the protection Josh McCown was getting against that Cards defensive front.
Well, they did bring it in the third quarter.
Yeah.
And then he couldn't do anything. And then they backed off again in the fourth, and all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, they're coming back here. If they didn't make as many mistakes as they made, and they had a number of turnovers, it's like, who knows what would have happened?
I think in the first half they were thinking, we're going to make Josh McCown beat us with his accuracy because he can't.
Right.
And then in the third quarter, there was blood in the water, and the Cardinals were like sharks. He was injured. Right, he was clearly not 100%, and they were coming after him, and that's when the heat got ratcheted up. And then, like I said, he exposed himself for who he is. He's not going to carry a team to victory.
Let's take a look at some of the overall numbers in yesterday's games. Cardinals versus Browns, just the total yards. The Cardinals finished with 491 yards against the Browns, 254 yards. Clearly, and like I said, going in, thank goodness it was the Cleveland Browns.
Thank goodness. And you know what? You look at Carson Palmer, and I know we'll talk about him again, but Bruce Arians thought he played great yesterday. There were moments where you're going, what was that?
Right.
Carson, who'd you throw that to?
Yeah.
A couple moments?
But also of those 491 total, thank goodness for Michael Floyd and Chris Johnson, because they over 100 for each of those guys.
Yeah. 372 yards passing, 215 for the Browns. You know, sort of what you kind of expect with Carson Palmer. He's been right around 400. 300 to 400 yards. And then Josh McCown, like you said, 250 yards. Yeah, that's kind of what he's going to give you at this age. And then the rushing yards, obviously, when you hold a team to less than 40 yards rushing, not much good's going to happen offensively, right? I mean, it's just not going to happen for him. And then the turnover battle was just crazy. The Cardinals just giving the ball up.
That's always the biggest number for the Cardinals. That is the only number that matters.
Really?
Because they have so many weapons and they're so explosive. They hold on to the ball. They don't beat themselves. It's going to be very hard to beat them. But that's what kept Cleveland in the game. Turnovers. That is it's amazing, really, to have a 2 turnover differential and still win on the road.
Oh, yeah,
handily like they did.
You fold this paper in half and just look at that and ask me who won. 9 times out of 10.
Absolutely.
It's the one that won the turnover battle.
And,
They've got to get that fixed, too.
They have to fix it.
I mean, to be an elite team, to get where they want to go, we can't be talking about turnovers every week.
No, Fitz said after the game, he said, we have still yet to play a full 4 quarters to our full potential. They have not.
And it scares me.
It's a good thing and a bad thing, right?
Yeah, it scares me because the second half of the season gets really tough for them.
Yeah.
It gets really tough. But let's take a look at it. Let's stay with the statistics. Let's talk about the quarterback battle. Carson Palmer against Josh McCown, and this is kind of what we do. And last week I brought up the fact, Tom, that Carson in his career has had 8 400-yard passing games, and he's 1-7 in those games. So I was happy to see he didn't throw for 400 yards.
That usually means garbage time for a lot of quarterbacks, I guess, when you get up to 400. Yeah. You just want Carson, to always walk out of the game healthy. He is just that valuable. That goes without saying. But when he has some, a little time, when they're not putting too much pressure on him, when you can walk away and think, man, he was just in control of that offense. And I think he was yesterday. He had some throws he wanted to get back, no doubt about it. But again, picking a different receiver to win with, like Michael Floyd, he came to play yesterday, no doubt. Not having John Brown and still having 378, that's impressive.
It's kind of surprising looking at those 372 yards, since they did have a balanced attack yesterday. 38, I believe it was 38 rushes and 38 carries, passing attempts. So, I mean, perfectly balanced. But that was the second highest passing total he's had all season. It's kind of surprising. I guess it's just
it's interesting. After the game, and we got comments from Carson Palmer after, he said that was the best called game, and he's talking about Bruce Arians calling the offense that he's ever been involved with.
Since Junior Pee-wees.
Since Junior Pee-wee. Yeah, he said it was the best ever. He said when they were playing cover 1. He said Coach was on with every single call, and he said he got the calls, and he was like, wow, that's the perfect call.
The only difference is he didn't get a juice box after the game yesterday.
Where's my candy?
I love the mutual admiration society that Arians and Palmer clearly have. They are attached at the hip. All right, they are the secret to each other's success.
They are.
Each of them is going to get the other one to the Super Bowl if they're going to go, so they know how closely they have to be connected. But what you want is you want a quarterback that's just completely in tune with an Arians offense, and he's got him, just like Ben Roethlisberger was, right? And even Andrew Luck, that one year that Arians brought the Colts to the Cardinals. I mean, his offense relies on a great quarterback, a drop-back passer that can get the job done, and they're in sync right now.
And about, Carson Palmer also said yesterday, I mean, every front they gave him, every defensive look, Bruce had the perfect call for. What concerns me is, yes, the second half, the Cleveland Browns were outcoached. Period.
Oh, there's no question,
From here on out, that's concerning because they're going to face superior teams with superior coaching. So it's going to be a more even match.
Here's the thing. We don't need Arians wasting his time with pep talks. that should be a given, right? We're 8 games into this. There should be no more flat performances where the coach has to crack the whip. I mean, it should be scheming, game plan, and adjustments during the game, and not having to get these guys fired up to play football.
We've talked about that for years. Do you really need to give professional athletes a pep talk? You're getting paid for crying out loud to go play the game at a high level, right?
Yeah, and now the season's half over. You could look at this. Okay, you can almost take it 1 quarter at a time.
Oh, yeah.
All right, half of the season is done. 6-2, great start. But man, like you said, Craig, every one of these games is like a playoff game. When you think about it, that is a big boy schedule the rest of the way.
Hey, let's stay with our stats from yesterday's game. The metrics on this one, the Brown game is our next one coming up. The Cardinals 119 rushing yards, the Browns 39 rushing yards. That's a 2-yard per carry average, less than.
I don't even know who the Browns running back is. No. Is Jim Brown still there? Ernest Biner? Who is it? I couldn't even tell you.
Propped up the ball twice.
Yeah.
So I mean, that is a huge difference in the NFL right now. If you can run the ball, and that's why I say, and this whole philosophy of we can pick up a running back anywhere down the road, I don't buy it. When you have a great running back in the first round, take him. Look at Todd Gurley for the Rams. I mean, they took Todd Gurley, waited 5 weeks for him, and now look what he's doing.
I think the trend is slowly shifting back towards that in the NFL. If a guy can stay healthy, if he's a great running back, that is a difference maker. When you can grind out the clock, when you can move those chains, that's what wins football games right now.
And another Johnson to talk about. Who was this Duke Johnson Jr. guy for Cleveland? I mean, that guy was a playmaker. But
it's obvious though that Arians is going to ride Chris Johnson as hard and as far as he can. I mean, Ellington was basically vaporized or disappeared from the primary part of that game.
Andre got in his doghouse last year when he had the tendon injury in his foot, and he went out for a few weeks. Remember, came back and played. He played with tendons, or injured tendon in his foot for almost the entire season, and he just never did enough for Arians. And so he's in his doghouse, and that's why they went and got Chris Johnson. And you're right, he's going to ride Chris Johnson the rest of the season.
You know, it's interesting because some coaches have just different philosophies. Remember Denny Green? He never wanted to draft players from smaller colleges. He only wanted those big university guys. I think with Arians, number one with him, it's speed. He wants speed at every position that he can, and he likes guys that have proven themselves in the NFL. If you've got a track record, and we are talking about a former MVP in Chris Johnson, who's fresh and has something to prove.
He's got a serious resume. And you look at these overall numbers, it's crazy because those are Chris Johnson numbers.
It's all,
really. I mean, he had 30 of the 38 carries.
It's all
109 of the rushing yards. I mean, he was the Cardinals rushing game yesterday. Usually we see a little bit of balance, and it's surprising, guys, because Bruce told us earlier last week that Andre Ellington is going to have a much bigger load. We're going to use him a lot more this week, so look out for that. Three touches? I mean, where was he?
I don't know. I think there should be a new rule with the Cardinals too. If Carson Palmer ever throws an interception, he should not be allowed to tackle whoever intercepted the ball. I am always holding my breath when he is going in there to try to stop someone running down.
Kind of a nice tackle, though.
Right?
Hey, let's talk some defense. But before we do, the phone number, if you want to get involved, is 602-685-3017. 602-685-3017. You can call us, share your opinion. We may not agree, but that's okay. Hashtag ABC15cards on social media. So defensively, we kind of talked about these with the offense going back, but the Cardinals defense gave up 254 yards of total offense to the Cleveland Browns. To me, that was unacceptable.
Sure. What was the total number for them?
254 yards for the Browns.
Yeah, and that's, in an NFL game, I don't think that's too horrible. I'd still like to see the defense create more turnovers.
It's the Browns. That's my take on that.
Right. So, hey, at this point, as long as they get that W, but man, there is no doubt that it's not a perfect team. There's still flaws. There's still areas of weakness that they can work on. First-year defensive coordinator, still taking a while, I think, for him to really stamp his identity on what this Cardinals defense is. But they did wake up in that second half, and which is opposite of Pittsburgh. Well, they played crappy the whole game against Pittsburgh, but they certainly laid an egg at the end of the game. So at least they went out to win it in the final.
The number that jumps out at me, Jason, is 1 sack. This defense has to be better when you're bringing pressure.
When you're bringing pressure from Calais Campbell.
I mean, let's get some guys in there. Let's get more than 1 sack. That's what we're really lacking.
It's concerning because earlier this season we were discussing whether or not the Arizona Cardinals defense was the new Legion of Boom. You have to, in order to be the Legion of Boom, you got to bring it all 4 quarters. This first half, guys, some of these numbers, I mean, third down conversions allowed, 6 of 8. Browns were 3 for 3 in the red zone, and they were all on third down, and of course, no turnovers forced in that first half. I mean, that was as pitiful of a first half defensively
really
as we've seen.
You know, we're kind of glossing over it a little bit, but
No,
man,
it's
that
true.
first half
It was awful.
That was like old school
Especially
Cardinal
second
football,
quarter.
wasn't it?
It
Where they
was.
were just a joke.
When
Yeah.
you watched
Yeah.
that game yesterday, I sort of felt like at the end, like, what did we just watch? This
Yeah.
team is not a Super Bowl contender. Yes, they're 6-2, and thank goodness the Broncos were able to beat the Packers last night because that knocked them down a peg. But this team, when I watch them, and you watch them against the Rams at home a few weeks ago, you watch them at Pittsburgh, you watch them yesterday, this is not a Super Bowl team right now.
No, I don't think so either.